G'day, I'm Tim O'Callaghan, the BrandProtect guy from Piper Alderman Australian Lawyers, and I have with me today Michael Neale from Literally Brilliant Brand Creation Experts. Welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast, Tim.
Well, it's great to have you. Michael, you're a brand creation expert and I protect trademarks. So we should have a good conversation about how we can create and protect good, strong brands and trademarks.
Well, I think it's a really important subject, Tim, so thanks for coming up with the idea.
Well, why don't you lead off with this, Michael? How do you create a good, strong brand?
Well, it's an interesting question, and let's start off with what we actually think a brand is. And I think, my business, we help companies to understand what it is that makes their business brilliant in the eyes of their customers, right? And we help them to then, once they understand that, articulate that as a brand promise and then reorganize their business to deliver on that brand promise. And right at the heart of that is this idea of that we're making a promise to the customer about what we are going to do for them, what value we're going to deliver, what benefits they're going to gain from us. We are forming a relationship of trust with them. We're developing an experience for them. And actually, all of those things that essentially become the reputation and experience that somebody has of your business, of your offering, of your organization, that is your brand. And I think the crucial thing is we then need to make it very easy for people to understand it and then provide maybe a memory hook so that people can remember your brand when they want that service or product in the future. And that's essentially the business that we're in.
So the brand is the promise.
Yeah, it's actually a very complex thing. And this is the problem with brand, is it is actually a complex collection of things. With some organizations and some products, we're very, very high involvement. Some we're less involved in the purchasing decision. But in essence, a brand is a connection that we have with our memory of it, our experience of it, the reputation, the expectation of what we will get when we engage with that brand, just our feeling about it. All of those things are gathered up into one big thing that we call the brand. And so for us to be able to access that brand and to use it constructively in business, we need people to be able to remember it. We need to be, when it comes to the point of making a purchase, they need to choose our brand, which means they want to have that experience again, or they want the experience that their friends have had, or the experience that they believe will best fit what they're looking for. And so the complex issue is, how do we take all of those things and tie them to something that people can remember? And that might be a kind of a memory hook that we would call maybe a logo, a visual identity, and maybe some narrative, including perhaps a tagline. So all of those things become our brand assets. They're the things that abbreviate, make it easy for customers to understand what it is that we're offering and to remember us when they have a good experience of us.
So those things you talk about, we would call trademarks, and they are the sort of memory hook perhaps to the brand. The trademarks might be words or pictures like logos, or could be, as you say, taglines, and could even be colours and scents and sounds.
Yes.
Things that remind the consumer of your brand.
That's exactly right. And I think it can be images, it can be packaging, so specific types of packaging might be a key thing that reminds the consumer or differentiates your offering from other offerings in the marketplace. And those special packaging, that unique packaging can actually be a trademark in itself.
So what sorts of things do you think a consumer would expect to see encompassed within a business's brand?
Sometimes I think the really important thing is to have a very distinctive and unique set of what we might call brand assets, like a unique logo or a unique name or unique packaging or unique colour or a unique sound associated with it. And those things are the things that make it easily remembered and differentiated from other offerings. Then our task is to associate those things with all of the other things: the reputation, the brand narrative, and the experience, how we feel about the brand. So those emotional connections associated to those very distinctive brand assets.
So when people are thinking about creating a brand, do you think it's a good idea to start with what do I want to be known for? What do I want to be valued for?
Yeah, I think that has always been our position. And, my business, we start by not saying what does the company think that they are good at, but actually asking what do the customers think that the company is good at, right? And quite often, the essence of the brand is better described by the customers, by what the customers are saying about you. I often say that the essence of your brand is what your customers are saying about you, right? And so that is like the starting point. If we can understand what the customers value about our offering, and we can explain that very easily to other people who are not yet customers, then I think that's a fantastic starting point for the brand.
So what sort of qualities or attributes do you think people might have in mind when they answer the question, why would a customer want to pay a premium price for you?
Yeah, look, I think that's a great question. And I think the answer is it depends. And I think that sounds a bit like a cop-out. But if these characteristics are what make different companies, different offerings unique, then obviously they're going to be unique for each of those different companies. However, there are a number of things that might contribute to that. So, for example, just the customer experience, how easy it is to do business with an organisation, how friendly the people in that organisation are, the quality of the work that they do, the convenience, how quickly and easily it is to gain a benefit from a particular product or a service. All of those are factors that you might consider as differentiating factors in your brand.
Some talk about trust.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a fair bit of academic research to show that trust is a precursor to commitment. And if you want somebody to be committed to your brand, then trust is a really important underpinning principle. And trust comes through a number of ways, but even in human relationships, we know that when you make a promise and you keep your promise and you keep it consistently, then that builds trust over time. But if you are constantly making promises and never keeping them, that depletes trust. And so you will find that if you are making a brand promise to your customer, if you're saying this is what we're going to do for you, and you constantly deliver on that, whether that's a service or a product that they're buying subconsciously off of the supermarket shelf, if it's constantly delivering on the promise, then that's going to build trust. And when you build trust, you have the potential to build a commitment to your brand.
So you're making a promise to the customer that you'll give the customer a particular experience.
In essence, yes.
And the aim is to continue delivering on that promise and building a consistent experience for the customer that the customer grows to expect.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that if you think of somebody who hasn't started to be your customer, and let's just think about, good old word of mouth. I had an experience with this product. This product was excellent. I really love it. Oh, which product was that? Oh, it was this one. How do I recognize it in the store? That's where the brand comes in. Oh, it's called such and such, or it's the one in the triangular packaging, or it's the one in the jar with the silver lid, right? So there are lots of different ways that a customer could help a friend identify a product that they have used, that they have been really satisfied with. So what are the identifiers that the memory hook that satisfied customer can pass on in word of mouth? That's a really useful way of thinking about the brand, all of the experiences that I've just explained. How do you recognise it in the supermarket? Well, you look for this. And that's I guess, where the importance of trademarks comes in.
Yeah, as you said, the trademark is the hook to the brand.
Correct.
So it's a shorthand way.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of describing it. It's the shorthand for all of the other things that we talk about. And I think we don't have time to say, I really liked this product. It because of these 106 different reasons. These are all the things that I like about it. We just say, this is a great product. I really love it. And here's its name. This is what it looks like. You can buy it in this shop, right? And that's the shorthand bit of explaining that complex set of ideas that formulates the brand. Look, I also think that marketing people like me, we get really excited about all of the complex stuff, and we articulate all of it. Sometimes articulating all of it's not particularly helpful because a lot of it is stuff that people understand tacitly and not overtly. They just, I like that. They haven't analysed why they like it, but it might be a number of reasons why they like it. They just know that they like it. And sometimes our job is to my job is to sift through all of the things that they like and identify the 2 or 3 things that are really, really, really important, and bringing those out in our conversation about that particular brand, and tying those attributes to those key brand assets, that like the logo or the brand name or the packaging.
What I hear you saying is that you're helping your clients articulate the experience that they want the customer to have and the promise that they're making to their customer, and then the trademark, being the hook to the brand, is something that will quickly connect with that experience and that promise.
That's exactly right, yeah.
It's interesting that you say you want your clients to have a consistent and constant delivery on a promise so that the customer can come to understand and connect with it. As a trademark expert, I'm telling clients they really need to be consistent in their use of the trademarks, have consistent use of a trademark in order to build reputation in the trademark so that people come to recognise it quickly as being associated with you. So we're talking a similar language there, aren't we?
Yes, I think we are. And I think we're talking about the same, or different edges of the same sword, if you like, because I think by constantly and consistently using your trademark, you are building trust in those assets, if you like. You're building value in those assets. And then, by continually delivering on your promise, the promise associated with that logo or with that brand name, then you are adding value to that from a sort of a customer experience perspective. So yeah, I think we're really talking about the same thing, but from different perspectives.
I want to talk a bit about how to choose a strong trademark, so a strong hook to that brand. And I would suggest, and I'd be interested in your view, that the first step is to make sure that the trademark accurately reflects the brand promise.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would definitely say that, and I think, look, I wrote a paper on this topic a few years ago, and it was called "Your Logo Is Not Your Brand," and in essence, I think sometimes marketing people get into organisations and they feel like they have to make their mark, and they want to freshen up the logo or whatever, and they go to their advertising agency or their graphic designer or their brand expert, and they say, we want you to freshen up our logo, make it more dynamic, right? And that's the only brief that they give. And I think to some extent, when you're trying to add value to your brand, I think the first thing you need to do is understand what your brand means. And that's actually harder work. What do our customers really value in our brand? And then that can form the basis of a brief that you would give your advertising agency or your graphic designer. And in fact, when I wrote this paper, and basically said, do the hard work on understanding your brand narrative first before you go and brief your graphic designer. We had a graphic design association pick this up in the US, and I got an enormous amount of feedback saying, "Gosh, this is really what we want marketing people to do, to give us better quality briefing." And to some extent, it's great to brief that in from the start, but then once you've got your brand name and your logo established, then I think you need to work hard into building around that, the meaning of that brand. So yeah, it is one of those things where we want our logo to be designed around that customer experience, but once it's done, I think we have to continue to build. We have to continue to make those associations. I looked at Interbrand, which is an international organisation that publishes the best 100 brands of whatever year. Every year it comes out. And I looked at the top 5 brands according to the Interbrand list for 2025, released in early 2026. The top 5 of the top 100 brands were all technology companies this year. And the interesting thing is, when I went back and looked at the creation of those brands over the years, most of them had a startup phase where their logo and even their name had changed. And I think they were trying to go through that startup phase where they were trying to really understand what it was that they were delivering, what it was that the customers were valuing in what they were doing for them. And though their businesses changed over the years, and I think the logos changed when they significantly redefined what it was that they did.
Almost what they stand for.
Correct, yeah. So I think that those slight changes, and in a couple of cases significant changes, were reflective of a change in their offering. And it was a migration in most cases, like a small change, like an update, but it certainly followed them redefining what it was that they were doing in the marketplace.
Well, when it comes to protecting trademarks, the two things I like to see, or I encourage clients to create, is first of all a trademark that is different. That's really important, because if it's being used by someone else for the same goods or services, then it's going to get confused, but also it's going to be very hard to protect. And the second thing is it needs to be distinctive, as opposed to being descriptive of the very good or service that it's meant to relate to. So I wanted to talk to you from your perspective about trademarks being new and perhaps unique, and trademarks that are distinctive, that is not descriptive. What's your thinking on that?
I think that's a really important observation, Tim. And for me, it's really important because, you know, we're talking about this bundle of benefits, these experiences and the reputation, and the satisfaction and the keeping of the promise. It's all associated with what you have done and the work that you've put into it. You don't want somebody to be confused and associate that with the wrong product when they go and buy it, or the wrong organisation when they go to get a service. You want them to very, very clearly link that product or service with your organisation. And so this is, you know, when you use the word memory hook, that's a really good word, because it needs to hook. It needs to be a really clear connector between that brand experience and your brand offering. So the distinctive part is really, really important. We can't let people become confused. Oh, was it that one or was it that one? It needs to leap out.
One of the biggest problems I think my clients have is when they come to me and they've already been using a trademark for 2 years. They've picked the trademarks, be they word marks or logos or taglines. They've been out there promoting them as they should, building reputation in them, and then they say, well, perhaps I should register that trademark as a trademark, and they come to me and I say, well, that trademark's already on the trademarks register, registered to someone else in respect to the same goods or services. And there is no way out of that. If you've been using a trademark, it's already registered to someone else. That registered owner has the right to sue you for using the trademark as long as you have. And really the only option you have is to change your trademark. So then you've blown 2 or 3 years of reputation and hard work in promoting and building that trademark.
Yeah, well, as you would know, I advise all of my clients to go to people like you and get great advice really early.
Well, I like the sound of that, Michael, but you can actually check the register yourself. Well, it's not that hard.
Well, actually, we do that as well, but you know, but I think before they go to you, if they did an Atmos search here in Australia, and there's a world IP database that they can look at, it's very, very easy to do searches on those and to get some preliminary understanding, and just do a little bit of research on the internet about what they need to do to have a trademark that they can protect, and then do the searching. Because if they've done that before they come and see the expert, and you should still see the expert, because there's lots of little bits that can trip you up. But if you've already done the groundwork when you go and see the expert, it makes it a much more efficient and effective process.
I find that as well. Do your homework first, and then go to the expert for some extra advice. But by all means, you've got to check the register. Yep. You got to Google it. Yep. And make sure that it's not already being used out there without being on the trademarks register. And the other thing that's important to note is that the Australian Trademarks Register only relates to rights in Australia. So if you have a short-term, medium-term intention to sell goods or services outside of Australia, you've got to check the trademarks registers in the countries where you intend to go. I'd say within the next 5 years, you should be checking the register now in case you want to sell your goods over there in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, I always check first the Australian database, and then, I think it's good to go onto the World IP Organisation database and check there, because it does give you a very, very big perspective.
Yeah, that can be time consuming, but it's well worth doing when you're picking a trademark, because you're going to put so much time and effort and expense into building your reputation in that trademark. It would be such a shame to find a couple of years later that you've got to turn around and change your brand.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people talk about the expense of getting advice about trademarks, or the time it takes to go and do searches, because you should be searching business names, you should be searching for URLs, you should be searching trademark databases, both locally and internationally. That's an investment of time, and then speaking to to your professional trademark lawyers or trademark advisors, that's a cash expense. All of those pale into, they're insignificant when you compare them to investing 3 years into building a brand and then realising that you've breached somebody else's trademark.
Yeah. And I think where I can be useful in that sort of experience is in perhaps giving advice about whether what you think is a similar trademark is in fact a similar trademark, or whether it might be okay even though it's on the register. And often trademarks are on the register but they cover totally different goods and services, so that might not be a problem. But it's worth doing your homework to start with and making sure that the trademark's not already on the register when you're picking them. Then the second thing we were talking about is picking a trademark that's distinctive, that is, it's not descriptive of the goods and services that you're talking about. And in my experience anyway, with all due respect to you marketing people, you can sometimes come up with trademarks that are very, very descriptive of what it is that you're using it for. Is that because it's quicker to remember, or is it...
It depends. I think if you think of let's go back to Interbrand and the top 10. One of the brands, very, very long established soft drink brand, had two components combined in its name, and in that respect was very, very descriptive, but probably also fairly unique. And the other one was a social media platform that I think its name really speaks to bringing an old communication device into a more instant and digital era. And I think, again, very descriptive name, but also somewhat unique in the way that they've created them, and they have successfully got those trademarks. Just about everybody else, though, is completely non-descriptive. So you look at the top 5, they do not describe what they do. I think their narrative connects the words with their brand. They connect their brand name through an explanation, but it's not a description. It's not intuitively understood. So I think clearly, if the 5 most valuable brands in the world are non-descriptive, maybe that's a lesson for us.
Well, I bet one of those is Apple. And I love Apple as a trademark. Don't act for Apple. I have no involvement with the laptop, although I've got one.
Yeah.
But what a great trademark in a couple of respects. As far as distinctiveness goes, Apple, you would think, has nothing to do with a computer. Yes, it's descriptive of fruit, and it would make a lousy trademark if it was meant to be in relation to an apple.
Yes.
Or even some other fruit.
Yeah.
But in relation to a computer and software, or even a mobile device, phone.
You know, Apple's a fantastic example of a brand that has made a very clear promise about changing the way that we think about doing things. It's a transformative brand, and to some extent, you've got a little apple with a little bite out of it, looking back to the tree of knowledge and that historical story of the Adam and Eve story, and in some of the writings I've seen on the Apple brand, the Apple logo, they do talk about that connection with knowledge as being a key to the brand, but that's projected on. It's not descriptive at all. It's only descriptive with respect to the story that has been projected onto that logo.
So it's a hook to that brand promise.
Correct.
We are the entry to great knowledge.
Yeah.
Doing things a bit differently.
Or giving you the knowledge to think about, or giving you the ability to rethink how you do things.
But as a trademark, on the face of it, totally unconnected.
Completely non-descriptive, yes.
With the goods. So from our perspective, completely distinctive. And very easy then to register. The Trademarks Office is slow to register and reluctant to register a trademark that's descriptive of the goods or services that it relates to, because it says, well, that's very descriptive, and lots of other traders out there would have every good reason to use that as a trademark to describe their own goods, so we're not going to give you a monopoly over it. It's not impossible to register a descriptive trademark, but what you need to do is to show that you have used it before you've applied to register it, or sometimes after you've applied to register it, but you've used it to such an extent that it's become what we call factually distinctive of you. That means that it's been used to such an extent that people would now start to associate that word or that picture or tagline with you, and any other trader that used it would be tending to be passing off or trying to acquire some of your reputation. So we still talk about this long, consistent use that you were talking about, but the journey to get that trademark registered could be a longer one and a more expensive one. But a trademark that's distinctive, like Apple, in respect of a computer, would be quite easy to register, because it's so distinctive that no other trader is likely to be thinking of using that in respect of their own computers.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have to remember is that people with very successful, very distinctive brands, very distinctive brand names, very distinctive logos that are non-descriptive have invested a lot of time, energy, money, kept promises in creating the value in those brands. So they haven't just picked a name and it has become instantly successful. I think it is the work that they have done to make it successful that's the important thing.
I've got another example of a trademark that we would say was very descriptive, and that is McDonald's for hamburgers. Now you might say, why is McDonald's descriptive for hamburgers? And the point is that it's descriptive because it's a very, very common surname in the Western world. It's probably one of the most common surnames, McDonald's. And so the Trademarks Office would say, well, there's plenty of people out there who have a surname McDonald and they want to open up hamburger stores and they want to call it McDonald's because that's their own name. So we've got to let them do that, and we're not going to give a monopoly right that trademarks registration gives somebody to somebody using the trademark McDonald's. But that trademark has been used so much consistently in all different countries over many, many years, that it would be very hard for somebody by the name of McDonald to open up a hamburger store and not be somewhat confused.
Yeah, so a moment ago I talked about brand names and logos that reflected or did not reflect or were not reflective of the description of what they were offering. And I would argue that McDonald's, the use of the name McDonald, is not descriptive automatically of what that offering is. It is, I understand why the Trademarks Office would see it as not trademarkable under normal circumstances because of the popularity of that as a family name. And in that context being descriptive, so-called descriptive.
There are what the Trademarks Office, at least in Australia, calls an inherent ability to distinguish. So a distinctive trademark has a high inherent ability to distinguish. A descriptive trademark has a very low inherent ability to distinguish. And some trademarks which are considered totally descriptive, like fresh for bread, would have no inherent ability to distinguish. Common surnames have no inherent ability to distinguish, so they're considered quite descriptive. And the other one is place names.
Yeah.
So Sydney Taylors would be considered to be descriptive because it involves the use of a place like Sydney, and other tailors within Sydney might want to call their tailor shop Sydney Taylors. All of these trademarks are theoretically possible to register, but you have to have shown with those more descriptive trademarks, those ones that have very low or no inherent ability to distinguish, you've got to show that through your many years of consistent use of that trademark within the jurisdiction, it's become what they call factually distinctive because of your use, that, as you say, people would now start to connect that trademark as a hook to your brand and not to anyone else's brand.
So, Tim, what you're really saying is that in those very specific cases that we talked about a moment ago, they cease to be just descriptive names because of the effort that has been put in over time to build up recognition and association, so much so that they become factually distinctive, that people actually recognise and associate that name with a particular offering, and very substantially, so much that the weight of recognition makes them distinctive.
Not something that you would expect other traders to be able to use without some sort of improper motive. That is, that they're trying to trade off of your good reputation.
Yeah, or again, I think there would be an automatic confusion, wouldn't there?
Yeah. Wouldn't you say the same thing for the brand creator? That they want to deliver consistently on the brand promise and use trademarks that are hooked to that brand promise. They don't want to have other traders come in and come in at the last minute and use that same hook or a similar hook to confuse the customer to think that they're somehow associated with you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point, and I did make that point earlier. We don't want to create all of this understanding about our offering and tie it to something that can be confused, either accidentally or by design, for somebody else's offering.
So we've talked a bit about two aspects of choosing a trademark, Michael. One is that it needs to be new and not already being used or not already being registered on the various trademarks registers that you might want to be trading in. And the second is that the trademark needs to be distinctive in that it's not descriptive of the goods and services that it's meant to cover. Not because you can't register those, or you can't ultimately protect them, but it just takes a little bit longer to do that. The next thing we probably should talk about is protecting that trademark. And I have been talking about getting registration and making sure that you're not using a trademark that's already been registered by others. But I thought we should talk a bit about why you register a trademark.
Well, yeah, I think that's from the brand creator's perspective, you want to do everything you can do to protect your investment. You don't want somebody else trading off of your investment. You don't want people to confuse the marketplace. And I think I often talk about what I might call protective layering. So how many aspects of the brand can you protect? Can you protect the name? Can you protect a logo image? Can you protect the packaging design? What are the layers of protection that you can build in? Can you protect a tagline? And that might be something that you use only for a short period of time, but while you've got it, you want to protect it.
You can protect all of those things as trademarks. They're all considered to be trademarks, and you would call them hooks to the brand experience, whether they're words, logos, taglines, pictures, aspects of packaging, which I think is really important, the way in which the packaging looks. And then also these what we call more exotic trademarks like sounds and scents and colours. The BP green is registered as a trademark, for instance, or the scent might be the smell of darts for darts, or sound might be the ding in the McCain's microwave. McCain's ding, you've done it again. And people actually file with the trademarks office a sound recording of that sound. Sometimes a motion, the Toyota motion of someone jumping up with their arms up in the air.
Yep.
And that's become really powerful trademark of people jumping up in the air, and as an experience for Toyota. That motion is registered as a trademark, and it's described on the trademarks register as the motion of someone jumping up in the air with their arms outstretched, and there might also be a silhouette of that motion happening. All of these things can be protected as registered trademarks.
There are a lot, as I understand it, Tim, there are a lot of sounds that have been trademarked, whether they are engine notes or little beeps that happen when you start or little musical chimes that happen when you start your computer or turn on your phone, or there's lots of sounds that have been trademarked.
The Harley Davidson roar.
Yeah.
And these are all things that do actually hook into the brand experience, don't they? So it makes sense that you should be able to protect them as trademarks.
I think the Harley Davidson roar is a very good example, because it does also tie into their overall brand narrative of what they stand for. So they're not it's not just a distinctive asset. It certainly is a distinctive asset, but it really ties in well into what Harley Davidson stands for.
So in my mind, and what I tend to say to clients is, the reason why you apply and register a trademark is twofold. One thing is you want to be able to have a period of time where you have a monopoly over the use of the trademark. That gives you an opportunity to go out there and promote your brand promise, as you put it, and get people used to and remembering your trademarks and build reputation in the trademarks. The registration of the trademark gives you a monopoly right to do that for the period of the registration, which, by the way, can be continually renewed. So you have that monopoly right to use the trademark, and to sue someone who was to use the trademark even though it was registered. The other point, and maybe the more important point, is that because it's on the register, people who are choosing their trademarks should, and generally do, check the trademarks register before they start to use their own trademarks. And I believe that most of the time people who use a trademark that's similar to yours aren't aware of you. They're not doing it on purpose. Whereas if they were checking the register and you happen to be on the register, or your trademark happens to be on the register, it would tend to make them think twice before they used it and move on to another trademark. And the courts would take a very dim view of somebody who starts to use a trademark without having checked and noted that it was already on the register and that they had no right to use it in the first place. So you want to be a company that has your trademarks on the trademarks register, even if it's pending, even if it hasn't yet been registered, it's there on the register for everyone to see and allows people to choose another mark.
I know of a number of clients that I've worked with over the years who have registered a trademark, and then a few years down the track somebody starts using something similar. They haven't checked the register, and we've come across them and we've just sent them a really polite letter saying, oh, by the way, do you know that we've got this registered trademark? So it's not nasty or anything like that. And I think the overwhelming response that we've got back is, gosh, we're really sorry, we didn't know. And they go and change it.
I generally have the same experience. If the trademark's on the register and it's registered, and somebody else comes and begins to use a mark that is the same or very, very similar in respect to the same or similar goods, a simple letter reminding them that it's registered is generally enough to get them to change their trademark. But if your trademark is not on the register and you want to stop them from using it, they have all sorts of defences, or you have the obligation to prove that you already had reputation in the mark before the other side started using it, such that people would be misled or deceived by that mark. And that can be hard in a country like Australia, which has got different states. You can build reputation in one city or one state, but you might not have been heard of in another city or state across the country. And that person could, quite coincidentally, start using a trademark that's the same or similar to yours, and they would say that they have a right to use it because they're building reputation in their state. But under the Australian trademarks regime, the first one to apply to register it in the country has the best right to use that trademark in the country, unless somebody else has started using it before you filed for registration. So it's very, very important to file for registration as soon as you possibly can, and ideally before you've even started using the trademark yourself. Trademarks that may or may not be descriptive, Michael, one that comes to mind is your own, and that is literally brilliant. And as you know, we did a bit of work together when we got that trademark registered in Australia, literally brilliant. And the Trademarks Office initially said that's very, very descriptive, because what Michael's trying to say is that he and or his business are literally brilliant, and lots of other traders would want to say that they're literally brilliant. But that wasn't really what the trademark was about, was it?
No, here is our confession. Tim and I have worked together very, very successfully, and I do always recommend him because it was a fantastic piece of work we did to be able to get that trademark. And what we had to do is explain to the trademark examiner that the trademark literally brilliant did not relate to me or our business. It related to what we do for our clients, and indeed to very specific aspects of our process. So, literally brilliant. We're a company that helps companies to understand what makes them brilliant in the eyes of their customers. We help them to articulate it as a brand promise and then to reorganize their business to deliver that brand promise literally every day. And we call that the literally brilliant process. And that, in essence, is my brand promise. And at the heart of it is those two steps: the helping companies to understand their customers, to understand why they think they are brilliant, and the delivering on the brand promise and doing that literally every day. And that's how we say we help our customers, our clients, be literally brilliant. So in essence, the literally brilliant did not, as the examiner thought, relate to how we described ourselves. It was about our process and helping our clients to become literally brilliant in the eyes of their customers. So it was very reflective of our process.
And in the end, the examiner agreed with that, and the examiner was satisfied that the trademark was not as descriptive as they had at first thought, and the trademark received registration rights.
Yeah, that's correct, Tim, as you well know, because I remember sitting in my drawing room with a very, very large file of evidence showing our processes and how we had promoted our processes very clearly using the brand promise I've just cited, and by using those words, literally brilliant. And I think we had the evidence, and we were able to produce a very credible and very persuasive argument that allowed the examiner to reconsider their position on our trademark, and that was very successful.
Another trademark that my firm, Piper Alderman, was able to protect with registration is the trademark BrandProtect. BrandProtect in relation to legal services, and one might at first blush think that that's also a descriptive trademark. But what we say of that is that the protection of the brand is more than just protection of trademarks. What we say is that we help people to protect all of the aspects of their brand promise. And as you've said, some of those aspects are trademarks and the like. But I think also part of certain people's brands could be their copyright, could be their confidential information, their ideas,
their recipes, their processes, absolutely, and even their packaging design, which we've already mentioned today. Even if it can't be protected by a trademark, if it can't be protected by a registered design or even
or a patent.
Yeah. So there are lots of things, I think, Tim, that you and I have discussed, and I can understand the breadth of the service that you bring to your clients.
So the trademark BrandProtect was intended to be broader than just protecting the trademarks. It was actually protecting all aspects of somebody's brand, all aspects of the innovation and creativity that businesses have and which they want to commercialise and make money from. We help them to protect, and we were able to get that trademark registered as a word mark, BrandProtect. So there are ways that you can get descriptive trademarks registered, either through explaining to the Trademarks Office what in fact the trademark means, and also sometimes by filing some evidence with the Trademarks Office about how you've used it over a long and consistent period, to the point where consumers would come to associate that trademark with your goods and services and not with others.
I'm smiling now because this idea of constant and consistent is something that Tim and I have talked about over and over again. It's one of my great mantras, and I think what you've just said then, Tim, just reinforces that again, about having a really good understanding about what your key brand assets are. protecting your key brand assets where possible, but using them constantly and consistently. That's also him. Tim, one of the things that I think we really should take a minute to think about is, why do we want to build a really strong brand? And I guess, when people think of brands, they think of the big multinational brands. But brands are really, really important for small businesses too, particularly businesses that don't have scale. They're never going to win by being efficient or being cheap. What they really want to do is be recognised for some of the things that they can do that nobody else can do, that is special, that allows them to charge a premium or be chosen rather than somebody else. So I think that building a brand is about building value around your offering and being chosen for a very specific set of those experiences. And I think for that reason, brand building is not just the domain of the really big organisations, it's the domain of the small organisations as well.
Well, we all know that just competing for price is a race to the bottom.
Correct.
And what all businesses are seeking to do is to build value for their customers and creating a brand promise that customers will value and will pay a premium for because they create value for them. And that's really part of your brand promise, isn't it?
Yeah, and that in essence, if you want to work out a way to value a brand, I guess the best way to value a brand is to understand how much people will choose your offering over a competitive offering. So yes, it's how committed are they, and how many people know your brand, and how committed are they to choosing your brand over a competitor.
It's true also to say of small companies that while they don't have a lot of spare cash, they still really need to be protecting these trademarks that they have by getting them on the register, getting them registered as soon as possible, as an insurance against spending a lot of money to develop a brand and then find that they can't protect it.
Absolutely. I cannot emphasize enough the risk that, or the cost of developing a brand that you cannot protect because you haven't done really simple things really early on. It's worth a small investment in the early stages of your business, or whilst you're still small and you're building. That's when you need to think about things like building your brand and protecting the trademarks that are the hooks for your brand, because you don't want to lose all of the effort that you're putting in the early phase.
And you don't want to get, as a lot of clients that come to me have received, a nasty letter from another law firm acting for a client who says the trademark you've been using infringes our client's rights because the trademark's already on the trademarks register, and we note that you started using your trademark sometime after it was on the register, and it's clear that you didn't check the register when you started, and we expect you to stop using within the next 7 days and account to us for any profit you've made since you started using it. You don't want to get that letter.
No, you certainly do not want to get that letter. And I think part of the issue is when businesses are small, they don't have a lot of time for people to be searching registers, but they actually need to make the time.
So I think that's a pretty good summary, Michael, of the discussion, and it's been really interesting to hear and to talk about how aspects of creation of brand from a marketing perspective fits in with and resonates with the aspects of trademark protection and and how really the trademark protection expert and the brand creation expert generally works together in the creation and protection of strong brands.
And again, I think that development of trust and understanding between the brand creation people and the brand protect people, that's also really important as well.
Make sure you've got a trademark that's not already on the register. Make sure that it's distinctive and not descriptive of the goods or services, or if it is going to be descriptive, be aware that it might be harder to register. Try and get the trademark registered as soon as you possibly can, before or as soon after you start to commercialise and use it, and make sure that you are registering the trademark not only in your country of origin, but also in the countries where you expect to trade in the foreseeable future, which I would say that was the next 5 years. And also when you're choosing a trademark, make sure it's not already on the trademark register in those countries where you expect to trade.
And get good advice.
Get good advice. Michael, it's been a pleasure as always to chat with you and to hear Literally Brilliant's perspective on all of this. And I hope that this has been a really useful and entertaining, or at least interesting, podcast for those of you out there who are interested in brand creation and trademark protection. From Michael Neale at Literally Brilliant, Tim O'Callaghan, the BrandProtect guy from Piper Alderman, Australian lawyers, wishing you all the best.
Thanks for having me, Tim.